Well, we are going to go ahead and get started, and we are going to just, be thankful that, for the opportunity to come together and to host this particular Lunch and Learn series today. Good afternoon. My name is Bishop Marcia Dinkins. I am a member of the Midwest Building Decarbonization Coalition. I serve as co-chair along with Apostle Dr. Junius B. Pressey. Midwest BDC is a diverse coalition of members that come from a variety of personal and professional backgrounds. Midwest BDC understands that our movement toward a clean energy future is strongest when we bring diverse perspectives and voices together. You know what that means, y'all? This work takes all of us. The goal of Midwest BDC is to transition Midwestern buildings to carbon-free renewable electricity that has the potential to reduce utility costs, increase housing affordability, improve residents' health and safety, and help state and local governments achieve climate goals because they truly need some help. To achieve this, the Midwest Building Decarbonization supports equitable, deep decarbonization strategies to address the regional challenges of cold climates and purple state politics. This coalition engages in Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri, Ohio, and Wisconsin. Today, we are honored that you are joining us for the Faith in Our Communities, Decarbonization for a Healthier Future Lunch and Learn. This will be moderated by Jennifer Young with Michigan IPL. Joining us for the conversation, we have Midwest BDC's Board of Directors Vice President, Sheila Curry-Campbell, and her pastor, Raymond C. Dix Jr. of Pilgrim Baptist Church in Fort Wayne, Indiana. They will cover the basics of the Inflation Reduction Act, or affectionately known by most, the IRA, and its groundbreaking policy shift that now allows nonprofits and local governments to directly benefit from federal solar energy incentives. We are no longer bound by tax credits. Nonprofits can now receive direct payments. This is a transformative step, y'all, that propels us towards a greener, more sustainable future while economically empowering our houses of worship. Again, I'd like to thank you for joining us. I'd like to invite you, after you hear all of this, to go to Midwest BDC's website and fill out that membership link because we need you to be a member. But again, welcome everyone. And Jennifer, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Bishop Marcia. Yes, I just want to reiterate that we're grateful and...
Oops, you're on mute.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So we are excited to be hearing today from Pastor Raymond Dix and Sheila Curry-Campbell. And with that, I will turn it over to you.
Well, Pastor, just introduce yourself.
Yeah.
Tell the folks who you are.
Okay. Well, hi. Good afternoon to everybody. My name is Pastor Raymond Dix Jr., senior pastor of the Pilgrim Baptist Church of Fort Wayne, Indiana. And, certainly happy to be here today to share what we can about renewable and clean energy.
Thank you, Pastor. And of course, I'm Sheila. We got 1 hour to give out a lot of information. And so, Jennifer, I know you have a series of questions that you want to ask, and there might be some questions in the chat. If we don't get to them today, no problem. We'll make sure that Maggie or Marcia or Marnice get back with them. So we want to take advantage of this 1 hour, this lunch and learn. I know my pastor is traveling. He's at a Starbucks near you. And with all the hats that he wears, he's a traveling man. Where are you today, Pastor?
Actually, I'm in Bloomington, Indiana, on my way back to Fort Wayne. Spent yesterday scouting locations for General Missionary Baptist State Convention of Indiana, which I serve also as the president. So busy day yesterday, and just headed back on the road to Fort Wayne today.
Awesome. Go ahead, Jennifer. I think you.
Yes. So I was just wondering if you could share a little bit about this new Inflation Reduction Act and what it means for faith communities, what it has meant for Pilgrim Baptist specifically, and you know, how do you see faith communities benefiting from this?
Sure. I think the key goal of the Inflation Reduction Act is reducing America's greenhouse, as we know, gas emissions, and accelerating the transition to cleaner energy sources. And really, to advance that objective, the new law offers 12 disparate credits that lower the barrier for things like purchasing electric vehicles or installing solar panels. The intent is to make these initiatives more attractive to more entities, including nonprofits in particular. These credits are designed to be tax exempt entities as refund elections on their Form 990 tax returns. And, really that's just kind of the start of it. We at Pilgrim are really glad to be a part of this initiative. And it's really caused us to kind of rethink our energy consumption and how we as a church could benefit from using clean energy going forward.
Sheila, anything you wanted to add?
Well, the Inflation Reduction Act, it was signed into law by President Biden back in August of 2022. And so we're trying to set the country on a path forward, 40% reduction, greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, compared to the 2005 levels. And so this is a heavy lift. And so the potential is to decarbonize the U.S. And so what we're trying to do is to reach out to our faith communities and to give them some support to understand how the Inflation Reduction Act works. Pastor, we know most churches, they don't pay taxes. They're tax exempt. And so can you explain to why it's so important that churches take advantage of these tax credits?
Well, most of us, we really don't worry about this from a church perspective, as long as we don't have to pay out money to the government, to Uncle Sam. But the real question is if Uncle Sam was willing to pay your church or pay churches to help with the green energy initiatives. And the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, contains a new provision that allows churches and other tax exempt organizations to receive money for investing in renewable energy projects such as electric vehicles and charging stations, and larger projects such as building microgrids. I just want to kind of add this one point. Many churches have vans and buses and things like that. Converting that to electric energy is one thing that would help make that church eligible for these payouts. In the past, renewable energy tax credits were generally only available to individuals and entities that had taxable income to offset. Since churches are tax exempt and we don't have any taxable income to offset, the pre-IRA federal renewable energy tax incentive structure wasn't really of no benefit to churches at all. But now with the Inflation Reduction Act, churches can significantly offset the cost of investing in renewable energy projects, utilizing their chest land and facilities. That's why the direct pay provision is being really called a game changer for tax exempt organizations' investment in renewable energy.
Right. I mean, that's awesome. So what is your vision for Pilgrim Baptist? How do you plan to take advantage of these new regulations, and what can it enable you to do? Not saying it's the be all end all solution, but how does this fit into your bigger plan?
Well, I think Sheila, you had something on that, or?
Well, I mean, I guess number one, people want to know who could take advantage of it. As we say, the direct pay is for nonprofits and churches. And so one of the biggest things that we've been dealing with here locally is making sure that folks have their paperwork in order. So one of the main things is, are you a 501c3? Maybe you are, maybe you're not. And so are you registered with sam.gov? It's
Right.
really important when you're talking about these dollars. Grant.gov. And so there's certain things that folks need to do to position themselves to be able to receive this. And so people want to know who could take advantage of it. Some of the IRA, the initiatives will aid families, organizations who want to change and take advantage of the green appliances. So we want folks to know before they go. And I know that's a series that we're working on right now to make sure people know what items to purchase, make sure that they know about the rebates, the incentives. And so a lot of these opportunities are stackable. And so not only with churches do we want to make sure that people understand, but the nonprofits, the folks that usually do not do anything more than just file the 990. And so through the IRA benefits, houses of worships, they can see becoming environmental friendly, and they can reinvent their facility. They could take more efficient precautions when they're dealing with their congregation. So it's a great opportunity for religious institutions to seek and empower the communities and the lives and to be sustainable. So that's what we're trying to get out. And I appreciate my pastor. I mean, we're always trying to sell this to our trustees boards. And Pastor, I know we have an example that we usually use in terms of how important and how you can take advantage of these opportunities. Did you want to speak on that, sir?
Sure. And really what it boils down to in putting this into kind of practical terms, the appropriate steps, assuming the appropriate steps are taken, what this means is, let's say a church invests $200,000 in a new solar array project, which is eligible for a 30% tax credit. That or said church would receive $60,000 directly from the U.S. Treasury, and the amount of the credit can increase based on certain factors such as whether the project resources are sourced domestically and if the project is being built in a low-income neighborhood. Now, I just want to pause there for a minute and show how important that is for historically Black congregations, demographically Black congregations. Many of them are in neighborhoods where people live at or below the poverty line. And so, it's to be able to do this in low income neighborhoods is a huge benefit for these congregations and the people that attend those churches. It's important to keep in mind, however, that the IRS is still reviewing the impact of the IRA and has not yet issued the final guidelines. So the exact parameters of the credits, as with many things, is subject to change. So we'll see how that goes so far.
Right. We know that right now the IRS it's trying to figure it out. They're trying to figure out how they're going to, if this is going to be the 990T or 990I that churches would file. I know several workshops I've been in, they spoke about not that this is a calendar year, like folks file their taxes in April or whatever, but these direct pays will be coming as the work is completed. And so we want folks to know, like I say, as much about this as possible. There's a lot of bonus credits, what they call bonus credits that's available. And so with the investment tax credit, there's opportunity to get 10% bonus for the project where it's located. If it's in an energy community, there's another 10%. If it meets the domestic manufacturing, if it's made in the USA. So you get another 10%. So all of these opportunities are stacked on top of each other. There's another incentive for the low income community, for tribal land. There's another 10%, for low income benefit projects. And so at the workshop I was just at this week, Pastor, over in Detroit, there were folks that were there from the Department of Energy, from HUD, from Department of Transportation, the EPA. And so one of the things they talked about is how do we as a community take advantage of stacking some of these services. One of the biggest things that I've just grabbed onto, Pastor, was HUD, where we, as you know, I mean, this is just a unique situation. We own a lot of property that surrounds the church. And the pastor always wanted to talk about what he want to do. Pastor, I done got some information on some things that we could do. And HUD has money. They're willing to help us come here. And this is not just specific to Fort Wayne. This is all over our region that we want to duplicate some of these things. So making sure that people know about the investment tax credit, knowing about some of those bonus credits and how they work. Like I say, these workshops could go on and on and on, Jennifer. So I'm going to pause right there just to let you get in for a second. I know we're probably doing good on time. It's only 20 after. We have another 40 minutes to go. So go ahead, Miss Jennifer.
Okay. Yeah, so you had referenced about sam.gov and the importance of registering. I know that is an important process because we're working with some faith communities that it's been a process just registering with them. Can you just speak to why is that an important step in that process and how do they go about that?
Well, there used to be a Dun and Bradstreet number that all businesses would get. When we found out about this unique identifying number that you needed, it was probably about a year ago, Pastor. I think it took us about 6 months to get that number.
Right.
If you check the wrong box, you're hemmed up in a queue. If you don't complete something or sign something, you're in another queue. So, I mean, it's really important that you have someone on your team or you take advantage of some of the technical support that's out there because there's all type of technical support that will walk you through this. We were a guinea pig, and so we learned by our own experience how important it was, even though we're registered as a 501c3, which we've been registered since 2019. The Dun and Bradstreet transition only took place here in 2022. And so a lot of people weren't familiar with it. And so you didn't find out until you went to go and apply for some of these opportunities. And then it's like, are you registered with sam.gov? Are you registered with grant.gov? Do you have a unique number? So, I mean, it was a learning curve for us. Once again, maybe that's another workshop we can have at a later date, but it's more than just applying. It's making sure that you have your paperwork in order. So, yeah.
So, the one of the things that you mentioned, Jennifer, and Sheila has mentioned is about the property that churches sometimes own. One thing we say around Pilgrim is that God isn't making any more dirt, so we have to take advantage of using our property to the best of our ability, and so that's what makes this this IRA really a game changer for those of us who are in the tax exempt community. They want to invest in renewable energy or looking to kind of repurpose excess property. The availability of direct payments for tax credits means that the payback period for any renewable project can be greatly reduced, which means we'll see more of them. And that's great news, not only for entities that are making the investments, but also for obviously our environment. There are institutions of higher learning, Sheila, that are partnering with entities like HUD when it comes to looking at affordable housing and those kinds of things, and really looking to provide resources, opportunities, and training for historically Black congregations. And I'm sure that's something that's available to all congregations, but in a very real sense, many of these historically Black congregations have property, but don't necessarily have access to the resources that it takes to develop that property. So there's a lot going on in that nowadays, and I think the IRA fits right into that so that we can do this with our environment in mind.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I know the Renew America for nonprofits. It's a grant funding for nonprofits, and it helps organizations remove some of the building materials to improve their energy efficiency, like lower their utility costs and reduce their carbon emissions. So what that funding offers, it offers energy efficiency for you replacing out your stove, rewiring, plumbing. And so there's other renovations for heating, ventilation, air conditioned systems. And some of these things, when we're talking to our local folks, and I know we did a big push at the church, it's how people could stack some of these resources. What we have here is the community action. It's called Bright Point. Every city, every state has one where this funding comes into the state for weatherization. Well, a lot of times people think I'm over income, I don't qualify. But we got to make sure that people understand. Call before you know. Don't just assume that you don't qualify. The formula is totally different now. It's not the way that it might have been back in the 70s. And so a formula of a family of one, it could be different and you could qualify and take advantage of the weatherization, the installation, the new windows, and then come back and add that solar on top of that. So we just have to educate people. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that we're trying to do here at Midwest BDC is to educate people on all of the opportunities, all of the resources, and all the services that are out there for renewable energy.
All right. Thank you. There is a question in the chat from Kimberly. Can you repeat the order of the process as far as registering at sam.gov? So you register, you get an organizational number, and then you apply for technical support while you're writing your application, or do you do that before the application process?
I'm not sure at what point Kim is referring to, if she's referring to someone that already has a 501c3, or is she just referring to someone that has a tax ID number? Some of the opportunities you must be a 501c3. Some of the opportunities you must be a 5. So I got to be clear on saying that.
Yeah.
You must be a 501c3. And so the process really starts whether or not, if you are decent in order, are you a 501c3? Maybe you need to ask Kim that question, because if you're a 501c3 and you had a Dun and Bradstreet number, that number would automatically convert to that unique number. But it's a step that you have to take to start that process. I don't know if that helps Kim or not.
Okay, she says a good point. Thanks. Yeah, we have been working with houses of worship that primarily are 501c3s, but didn't have the sam.gov. So that has been a new process for them. There's another question in the chat here from Christopher Carter. Are you telling churches to put savings into a trust? In other words, to be able to return the funds at some point. You know, some municipalities, I don't know that if I've seen this in a faith context, but municipalities put the energy savings that their projects achieve into a revolving loan fund, so that funds them being able to do other energy projects down the line. Have you seen any instances of communities, faith communities or otherwise, being able to create a way to return the energy savings for future projects?
You know, we were just at the table with the city of Fort Wayne, city utilities, and the Solar for All project.
Yes.
And that particular project, that was one of the things that came up in the conversation. City utility would like to do community solar, which we know in Indiana we don't have that at this point. But their proposal is that they do community solar, and what you would get off of that energy from city utility would be a discount. And so it would not be per household, because it would be community solar, maybe ground mounted, not necessarily on a roof. And so the formula is a little different. I know in some spaces, that is what some churches do. They might have a credit of X amount. That X amount credit is then distributed to folks that have signed up or subscribed in their group. And so there's several different ways of moving those credits. And so we here in Indiana need to be innovative because we're in the beginning of this process. There is no formula right now. It's kind of a recommendation. So having community at the table, folks like the clergy, to be at the table to make sure that whatever we do is equitable. Justice 40 is all in this, but if we don't have the workforce development to put people in those places, then once again, it's another challenge. And so there's a lot of moving parts to this. Number one, we must position ourselves to be able to receive it, and that's by having your paperwork in order.
Yeah, and I think if I could chime in a little bit on that, regarding this idea of how the churches should handle the financial resources or benefits of this particular program. I think there are many times where smaller churches may not have, in particular, the expertise available within their congregation for financial counsel when it comes to these kind of things. I would say more than anything, once that Sheila said, getting your paperwork in order so that you can actually receive these funds, seek out some credible financial advice. When it comes to setting up a trust, most major banks, matter of fact, most banks all have a trust department. And you can kind of shop around to see who gives you the best returns and things like that when you talk about setting up that trust. So I would say if you don't have, now here's another thing. A lot of churches have that kind of expertise in the congregation and don't know they have it. Ask the question. Get up on Sunday morning and say, hey, is there anybody in here that has experience or works at a financial institution or in a financial services department that has experience with trust? We need your help. And you may have volunteer help that comes from in a way that you didn't even expect. Real quickly, many of us have heard of Saddleback Church in California with Rick Warren, and he's retired now, but he got up one Sunday morning and they needed expertise in land acquisition, and come to find out, a member of his congregation, was a huge congregation, so it's easy to understand why he didn't know, but a member of his congregation was the vice president of land acquisition for Disney. I mean, you can't get better advice perhaps than having the vice president of land acquisition for Disney in your church. So get up and ask the question and say, is there anybody here that has this expertise that can surely help the church?
Definitely. I think a couple of, why we're just talking about that, we kind of got off the script here, but I think some of the people that you might want to reach out or look for is if you got an attorney in your church, if you have a bookkeeper or an accountant in your church, if you have administrative person that knows Word, Excel, PowerPoint, because it's going to take a team of people. Trust and believe, I have everybody with a letter A, B, C, E, F, G behind their name on my committee, because people bring resources to your table. And I know that we have been very fortunate to have folks that wanted to be a part of the green team and for us to push that agenda, the work that we've been doing from the pulpit. Thank you, Pastor, for allowing us and creating that space for us to advocate. I mean, we've been to city council, we wrote letters, we made public comments. So getting folks involved in that advocacy part, Pastor, I know it's a thin line, but can we just talk about that? I'm sorry, Jennifer, but can we just talk about that just for a moment, sir?
Sure. Well, for one thing, advocacy of itself can be kind of tricky, because what you need to do is share the vision. Share the vision of what the potential benefits are. We as human beings are often operate in a quid pro quo. What's in it for me? what do I get out of this? And I'm gonna tell you something. It's 35 years of pastoral ministry has taught me anything, is that houses of worship often operate the same way. What do we get out of bringing or exposing our congregants to these kinds of things. So I think that's first thing. You got to be able to clearly crystallize what this is, and so I mean, if you look at it like, and this is kind of getting back, Sheila, to what we were originally talking about, breaking this down into understandable components. Like for example, you would mention stacking the incentives and additional incentives that you can get. So it's not only the 30%, but you can get up to maybe 50 or 60% if you stack those incentives and you really do the research on what you qualify for. So solar project uses materials that are domestic. You add another 10% to your payback. Building in disadvantaged areas, adds another 10%. And so when you're talking about affordable housing, if you have an affordable housing project that your church is interested in doing, not only are you adding residual or another stream of income source to your congregation in an age where the economy is, fluctuating, and usually what people do first of all in the fluctuating economy is charitable giving goes down. So churches need to have these other streams of income. But also, not only do you do that when you talk about affordable housing, but now you're talking about really making a step forward on the environment, so that people in your community can see, here's a project that is not only being a blessing to the church, it's being a blessing to the community. So it's a clean energy project, and people can see that and say, wow, how did this church do this? We probably can do it too. And I think that's what we have to look at going forward, being able to clearly share the benefits to local congregations and their congregants, and then be able to do these projects that people can visibly see. If there's a solar array or something going on, they can say, wow, this is different. Every time I'll shut up when I say this. Every time I pass by down I-69 of Fort Wayne, past the GM plant, we have a General Motors, I see a solar array out there. And I think to myself, some part of the energy that's going through that GM plant that makes cars, and even makes cars with combustion engines, is still being powered by a clean energy source. So I think that's something that also makes it helpful to disseminate to people.
Thank you so much. I thank you, Jacob, also for dropping those links in the chat to the RRS website, which talks about direct pay and has more information there. You answered so many of the questions that I had, as far as, how can congregations find folks in their membership that could be resources? What are the types of examples of projects that folks can do with this new legislation? I'm would be really interested for us to check back in a few months down the road and just hear about examples of faith communities who are implementing these and hear their stories.
Sure.
Yeah, if anyone else has questions they want to drop in the chat as we're going, please share that. Sheila, anything else that you want to share at this time?
Well, I know that I just wanted to talk a little bit about the bonus credits. And so people want to know what kind of clean energy technology is eligible. And so I want people to be creative and think about this. Like I said, we have a slogan, know before you go. And so if they're talking about installing solar, to make sure that they're getting 3 quotes. We work with a group, we have some folks that's part of our coalition, Solar United Neighbors, and Reverend Kimberly's husband is someone that's over this region. And so we want to make sure that people aren't going to be taken advantage of. because that's one of the things you have to think about. I've watched so many webinars where I'm watching the different solar companies, how they are trying to figure out how to kind of like upcharge for the solar. So making sure you're talking to people that are not going to take advantage of you, that's not going to do that upsell um, to take advantage of you. There's leasing opportunities that's out there. Indiana have legislation right now that they're trying to move on green banks, but making sure that these resources that are coming into the state, your state, I'm in Indiana, so Indiana's unique. The money that's coming into the state that trickles down into the cities, we need to follow the money. So we all have a vested interest in this. We want to make sure that these dollars are going to the people that need it most. And I know a lot of times we're not watching, but we all need to be those folks that's watching and looking out for the little man. We've been very intentional in our agenda here. We have a specific space, East Central neighborhood, a specific zip code, 46803. And so we are honing in on that and trying to make sure that whatever resources that we can do in that small space, that it makes an impact. And so I guess knowing what the backup batteries, the storage batteries, wind, solar. Once again, I just want to make sure that people understand how these different technologies will not only improve the environment, but will improve their purse, their pockets, and especially houses of worship. I mean, that's our biggest expenses, our utilities. Payroll has nothing to do with our utility. You know what I'm saying? Our utilities are here. Payroll is here. So, I mean, I know most churches are the same way. So, just wanted to drop that nugget, Jennifer.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, Pilgrim has been a interesting case regarding this, because we just made a fairly large investment prior to the IRA in replacing our energy system, our HVAC system. And when we think about it, in hindsight, one of our reasons was that our old system, not only was it obsolete in the sense of at 30 something years old, it was breaking down. But the other thing was it wasn't very efficient. 30 years ago, it was efficient. I have pastored churches that have gone through transitions in the building, and say, even before I became the pastor, from a coal burner or oil burning furnace to coal to boiler, and then to forced air, natural gas. So I've seen those kind of conversions happen. The point that I want to make about ours, though, is with the size of our building, looking at efficiency was the number one thing. And now looking at this opportunity to use solar to power our new system gives us even more efficient, but more importantly, perhaps environmentally friendly and environmentally conscious type of operation. Our building is 48,000 square feet. So we have to think about how we can be efficient in our use, because like other churches, one of the big challenges of church today is attendance, and so that means resources have to be guarded and used really in an efficient manner, and being able to lower our utility costs maybe by 20% is huge, for us as a congregation. And it gives us, and here's the thing, it gives us more money to do the work that we're supposed to be doing. And that is sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ with everybody that we meet. That becomes a station of life and love for people in the community, to share with our neighbors the opportunities that God provides for us in our common humanity. So we have more resources with efficient energy to do those kind of things. If I can take the resources, for example, from that we save on being efficient, and be able to buy a van that has a lift for people who are disabled, to be able to get that van. So some of my seniors or some of the folks that we have that are in have mobility issues can get into that van and come to church. That is huge for them. And I think that's what God would have us to do, always thinking about loving our neighbors as we love ourselves.
That's beautiful. And that ties right into some of the comments in the chat where folks were saying, okay, I hear you saying this saves energy. How do you connect this to your mission and ministry? Because so Hillary put this statement here: the Bible does not explicitly mention environmental justice or decarbonization, but it does contain many passages that speak to the importance of caring for God's creation and protecting the environment. For example, Genesis 1:28 says, God created us in his image and gave us dominion over the earth. That dominion is not to be understood as a license to exploit or destroy the environment, but rather we are called to be stewards of God's creation and to use our resources wisely. I think that's exactly what, Pastor, you just shared with us.
Right. And then, when you look at that passage is a great example. But one thing I will also say, we are called to be arbiters and promoters of justice in general. And for years, the environment was considered not a part of that justice work that the Bible tells us to do. The Bible is clear about not letting the poor become taken advantage of by the wealthy or by those in power. And so we have to be able to say, how can we best position ourselves to be examples, in essence, salt and light in the world, for these individuals who may not have access to anybody to advocate for them. And so that's what, in looking at clean energy and these opportunities, we're really advocating for our communities, so that generations yet unborn will have the ability to enjoy the natural resources that we have in this country. There have been people who have come to America just to see the gorgeous natural resources and parks and things like that we have. If we aren't careful with the use of fossil fuels and things like that, we will have a situation where those resources may not be there as at least in the way they should for generations that are not yet even born. So I think it's important for us to look towards the future, even as we deal with the present.
Right. I just wanted to add on to that. We're not only a church, we are community. We started this 501c back in 2019, but we've always been a part of this fabric in this space, East Central neighborhood. And I'm sure everybody can speak the same about their space. But the doors of the church is open. We're not just here on Sunday. Right now, we're doing financial literacy right now. The pastor talked about financial literacy. We do the cooking classes. We do yoga. We do life skills training, teaching kids about Robert's Rule of Order. We have the summer job program. These kids actually get paid. We pay them. And so how do we take advantage of some of these opportunities? Because like I say, it's a whole bunch of money out there, and make sure that we're getting what we deserve. And when I say we, the BIPOC community, people that look like me. And so educating people on how to, that's where we at. That's where we are as Pilgrim here. We got the hashtag Pilgrim Life. That's what we do over here, Pilgrim Life.
That's Pilgrim Life. That's right.
Oh my God. I think everybody's ready to jump and join your church right here. There's a shout out from Apostle.
Plenty good room. We have electronic members too. So if you'd like to join as an e-member, just let us know. We can get that done.
There we go. Yeah. Apostle Dr. Frederick Ford says, yes, there are over 100 scriptures regarding caring for the environment. Jacob wanted to know how you win over skeptics in the congregation or church leadership that maybe don't understand necessarily where you're coming from with doing these projects. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic question, because as in any organization, in any group, you can go with many people support, some people don't. Those kind of things happen. So how do you win over those people? Number one, I think the key thing is to clearly define your mission, why you're doing this. This mission is consistent with the mission statement of our church, and that is to promote the gospel of Jesus Christ into all the world. Now, that gospel is not only about saving someone's soul, but it's also about helping to develop the individual and to make disciples. And being a disciple of Christ, one of the key parts of that is loving your neighbor as yourself. In Matthew 5, chapter 5 through Matthew chapter 7, you see Jesus sharing these Beatitudes and what's known as the Sermon on the Mount. And the purpose of him doing all of that was to say, here is how kingdom people should live. Mm-hmm. And so when it comes to people who may be skeptical or naysayers or whatever the case, my question, I would say, put the question back on them. How do you think kingdom people ought to live? How do you think we best reflect God's glory in this world? If we're not caring about what happens with our environment or caring about what happens with our neighbors, and when COVID-19 pandemic first hit, I came out before our congregation and said, we're not closing our doors in terms of Sunday morning gatherings because we have to, because of government ordered us to do it. We're doing it because we love our neighbors. We're doing it because I don't want to come in carrying the COVID virus that may not be affecting me, but some octogenarian in my church, may be affected by me just giving them a hug, which is something that we do all the time. So our goal was to say we love our neighbors, as I said. We did not want to affect the spread of COVID-19. So we stayed closed 13 months. And there were people that, Pastor, when we go open? I tell you when we go open. We go open when it's safe for our neighbors for us to open. And I know some churches didn't stay out that long. But we were determined that we were not going to hurt intentionally anybody in our community that may be at higher risk regarding the COVID-19 virus. So I would go back to saying, what's your mission? How do you reflect God's glory in the world? Why would you be against something like this? You're going to have to tell me more than you're just skeptical. You got to tell me how you're going to reflect God's glory. Because if you have a better idea, I'm willing to listen. But I know this is a great way for the church to reflect the glory of God in the world.
And on that note, I think we're going to start wrapping up. There have been so many great questions in the chat, but we are coming up on our time. And I don't know if we have some closing announcements, Marnice or Bishop Marcia.
I don't have any announcements. I will, it looks like there's a Justice 40 Leadership Boot Camp that's coming up November 16th, 2023. I would ask that Jacob put in a sustainability renaissance, save the date, July 31st to August 1st, 2024 will be in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Also putting in the links, to learn more about Midwest BDC, come to an orientation. And so what I like to do is, if you can keep that up, that'll help me. But what I'd like to do is, first of all, to thank Sheila Curry-Campbell and her pastor, and, Reverend Pastor Dix. And, one of the things that you said that I just want to hold on to, that I would like to close us with, is you kept reiterating, love your neighbor. And the thing about it is when we take that just a little further, it says, to love your neighbor as you would yourself. And so when you think about this work that you're doing, remember, this work is like double loop learning, and it's double loop love. Because if I'm loving me, I'm going to take care of me. I'm going to take care of my environment. I'm going to make sure that there's affordability. I'm going to make sure that my family has a quality of life. I'm going to make sure that there's a legacy there. I'm going to make sure that there are generational things that are passed down, not pain and problems, but purpose, and so I encourage you to just hold on to that. The other things that were mentioned here, everyone, is about this information dissemination, making sure that we are putting out good information, and trust and believe you have truly been fed some good information. So, Jacob has put a lot of things in the chat. I hope that you go back and you look at everything in the chat. Save the chat. I think it's 3 little dots on the side and you can save that chat. But I want you all to take away, number 1, he said, love your neighbor as you would yourself. So when you check how you're loving you, then you can see how you're spreading that love. Number 2, he talked about the glory of God and justice. I often ask people if justice is part of the mandate, or when we say yes to the calling, whatever your calling is, if it's being an accountant, if it's being an administrator, if it's being a preacher, pastor, teacher, whatever your gift is, remember this, attached to your gift is justice. And I want you to look in the mirror, because if God is the face of justice, then who are you looking like in this work that you're doing? Number 3, I want you to remember this. One of the things Pastor Dix said is when you are doing the work and you're doing the work in purpose and on purpose, you're creating streams of provision. And so if you're creating streams of provision, then you can expand your vision within your community. And that's the way that you break that sacred secular divide. You take the church into community, and then you bring the community into the church. And in order for this work to be successful, in order for this ministry to be successful, because this is what it is that we have to break the sacred secular divide, get out into the community, and then let the community feel comfortable enough to come into the church, and let the church be the resource. Go back to what we used to be, that first responder. I want to thank each and every one of you who joined today. Again, thanking Sheila Curry-Campbell and you, Pastor Raymond Dix, and Midwest BDCers, and I encourage you all, do a couple things. This is my call to action. Number 1, go to the website. Check out Midwest BDC, midwestdecarb.org. Then follow them on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and I think it's that X thing now. But you have all of these things right here. You know what? What can you do? I got 2 words for you. Get involved, get engaged, and get busy. And I want to thank each and every one of you for responding to the call of action and then putting your faith in action. So I want to wish you all a wonderful, wonderful day. Again, we wouldn't be here without you. And if you have any further questions, you can put them in the chat or send an email. Send it to Marnisha, y'all. Don't send it to me. Send it to Jacob. Don't send it to me. Send it to Sheila. Don't send it to me. I am the last one on the totem pole. So just have a wonderfully blessed day.
Hold up before you leave. I just scrolled through. Pastor Bell, is that you on the line?
I don't know who Pastor Bell is.
I see Pastor Bell name in the chat.
They can't talk. They can't talk, Sheila, because it's the thing. But
everybody's muted. Okay.
Yes. But Pastor Bell, if you're here, thank you for joining us. It's always good to have those who preach the gospel with those beautiful feet that's bringing the news that's too good to be true. And y'all just heard some news that's too good to be true, but it's true, y'all. Act on it. Act and activate. Have a great day. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.